Well, good evening or good afternoon or good morning, depending on what time zone you're in. Welcome to strategic management of public health organizations. And I think I am really happy to have you here. I want you to know that as we go into this class, this is truly a blessing and certainly an opportunity for me to be able to share my experience with you and, believe it or not, actually to learn from you as well. So the first thing I'm going to start with, of course, is sort of setting a foundation, particularly based on chapters 1 and chapter 2. And one of the things I hope to accomplish in this process to share with you information you do not readily have, because I understand you have the text and there will be readings assigned and you have a syllabus and you'll look at that. But my goal here is certainly to be able to not only augment what you read in the various chapters in the text, but certainly to add to that, to enhance what you would read. So as we begin chapters 1 and 2, I just sort of want to lay the foundation for what would be the entire scope of the text. As it is right now, I think there is much discussion in the healthcare marketplace about transforming healthcare, particularly healthcare organizations, to become more agile, to become sustainable, and certainly more consumer-oriented. We see HSOs, which is a term I'll be using frequently throughout this course. HSO simply means health service organizations or healthcare organizations. But we do see HSOs adding sites of care. We see them creating new delivery models. We see them pursuing joint ventures and even investing in startups. These are just some of the examples of how health service organizations are rethinking how they can impact healthcare. But what does all this innovation mean from a strategic management perspective, and how can organizations begin to foster this kind of change with a view to improved access to healthcare, with a view to lowering the cost of care, with a view to improving outcomes, which, as you well know, is referred to as the triple aim. These first two chapters, and ultimately the text readings, will set the foundation for you to appreciate strategic management of public healthcare organizations, certainly within the context of current challenges in the market, implementing integrated business technology, changing management, and certainly redesigning healthcare in a way that can establish that transformational roadmap that will help make progress towards a new operational framework. So these two chapters will really set the stage for strategic management decisions around key areas. And please note, as I highlight these areas, they're by no means exhaustive, but these are certainly key areas that you'll run into from a very practical perspective. And particularly so, from my experience working with multiple healthcare organizations, where particularly, from your brick and mortar to your digital health organizations, these are some of the areas that I'd like to highlight that I think will point you in the right direction and will set the foundation for where you need to go. Now, these particular areas I want to highlight actually are about 7. And again, like I said, these are by no means exhaustive. The first one is how we deconstruct the current state we are in as a healthcare organization to understand how we attain the future state, aka beginning with the end in mind. The second segment is about identifying what stands in the way of progress. What are the obstacles, and how do we overcome those obstacles? Third, how do we optimize this transformation to begin reaping the rewards sooner rather than later? And by that, what I mean is we'll begin to learn that the decisions we make will have short-term impact, some will have medium impact, and others will have long-term impact. So how do we optimize this transformation to begin reaping rewards sooner rather than later, and what platforms can be used to facilitate this transformation? Fourth, how can we maintain a 360-degree view of a health service organization, a HSO or a HCO, healthcare organization? Or how can we maintain a 360-degree view of a specific department within a healthcare organization, and particularly so here, I'm referring to the financial health of that department or overall financial health of the health service organization? How can reporting be streamlined as a fifth factor? How do we align our current EHR with revenue cycle systems and other systems that facilitate a greater insight into the operation of the healthcare organization? How do we leverage, as a seventh point, how do we leverage emerging technologies effectively? And so for a minute, while these are the primary points that I want to point to as setting the stage for where we're going throughout this class, like I said, keep in mind they're by no means exhaustive. But let's go back to number one, which is really deconstructing the current state we're in, understanding how we attain the future state. Okay, so essentially we're talking about beginning with the end in mind. We know today's healthcare is increasingly competitive, significantly regulated, and rapidly changing. Many health service organizations are focused on continuous improvement to enhance quality, to curb cost, and certainly to deliver value. But siloed clinical, financial, and business functions make it very challenging to not only execute improvements, but to understand what needs to be fixed in the first place. Additionally, disjointed and disparate technology make it difficult to gain a true picture or true perspective of an organization's performance to enable real-time, data-driven decision-making. And I'm sure at this point you have all heard that term, data-driven decision-making, which sometimes may be referred to as evidence-based decision-making, right? How often do we hear this terminology shared, whether it be in meetings or symposiums or conferences? Of course, we haven't had too many in the last year. And then the second aspect is identifying what stands in the way of progress and determining how to overcome it. Most HSOs, as mentioned earlier, acknowledge the need to evolve, but we know they certainly run into some major roadblocks when trying to make headway. One of the biggest roadblocks is the notion we've always done it this way and we're healthcare, so we're special. Unfortunately, we can all agree that this mindset is untenable. Another barrier is that while technology is critical to the change, many vendors that supply this technology provide industry agnostic tools that tend to be rather inflexible. And that means basically workflows have to be redesigned to accommodate the technology rather than the technology accommodating the healthcare professional and hospital workflows. As a consequence, a lot of time is spent on workarounds that really hinder the progress that technology is meant to offer. Thirdly, we talked about how do we optimize this transformation to begin reaping the rewards sooner rather than later. We know that when we make strategic management decisions, we basically make them for the short term, the medium, and the long term. And one of the tools that is touted throughout the industry is enterprise resource planning. So the question then becomes, what's the right ERP or enterprise resource planning platform that would help health service organizations and leaders make rapid strategic management decisions and activate those decisions that would keep the health service organization agile in the changing marketplace? Currently, a whole lot of health service organizations, billing, HR, administration, and practice management are all on different platforms. Today, though, you have basically enterprise resource planning solutions that integrate all of these functions, including the health service organization electronic health record system. These tools help users understand the current state, pinpoint improvement opportunities, and certainly help uncover risk points. They're also able to help with robust planning and risk mitigation and can clearly demonstrate the potential implications of future changes. In addition to streamlining processes, ERP dashboards communicate strategic advantages such as showing department heads where they have funds to pay for initiatives, how to take advantage of payment incentives, and certainly how to avoid payment penalties. Consider the example of a large healthcare system that has 30 to 40 hospitals spread across multiple states. By the headquarters being able to leverage an effective ERP system, they can see basically the total population census, and by default, they can prioritize capital investments in one geography over another. Finally, a fully integrated enterprise resource planning system provides a single source of truth for financial, human resource, and certainly supply chain data. When technology pulls data from a single source of truth, it increases the data acceptance and reduces the amount of time clinical and financial leaders spend making strategic decisions, or even for that matter, literally contradicting themselves. Okay. When we look at the fourth section here, how do we maintain a 360-degree view of a health service organization or specific department's financial health? Well, a 360-degree perspective certainly allows financial leaders to act more like cost stewards than cost wardens. And as you well know, that is a significant difference. And it facilitates partnering with different departments to improve performance in various ways. So essentially, financial leaders in hospitals, your CFO or certainly the financial group can review the data and point out patterns that reveal improvement opportunities. They can advise their colleagues on key strategies to drive value. And so essentially, we would be in a situation where we can make some very strategic decisions. And in addition to identifying opportunities more easily, they can also understand the process and workflow adjustments needed to support an initiative and get a better idea of how realistic it is and whether it's worth pursuing. So really the question that underlies this 360-degree perspective is what systems can be leveraged to better understand inflow and outflow and facilitate future forecasts of cash flow. Fifth, how can reporting be streamlined? Often health service organizations have multiple reports and scorecards that they don't even trust, quite frankly, because the data comes from disparate or non-integrated resources. And the information is not actionable, or for that matter, it is just difficult to understand. Are there technology solutions that can help overcome these hurdles? By offering data built on single source of truth, delivered in a standardized and consistent format, and that all end users find easy to understand and act on? That is the question. And that is the question around which strategic management decisions need to be made. How do we align our current EHR with revenue cycle systems? How do we do that? That's our sixth point. HSOs are in the process of upgrading or replacing their initial electronic healthcare records and revenue cycle investments. They're looking to consolidate systems so that clinical and billing functions are more integrated and intuitive. Seeking these same features in a solution that addresses the rest of an organization's business functions is indeed the next logical step. And when that system easily partners with clinical revenue cycle technology, healthcare organization leaders can better see the financial and resource ramifications of clinical choices, and conversely, the clinical impacts of financial decisions. How do we leverage these technologies? How do we leverage emerging technologies effectively? That's the seventh main factor we want to look at, and which, of course, we would begin to recognize at this point. Well, CIOs and CEOs hear a great deal these days about leveraging digital health. And we know COVID has certainly accelerated the adoption of digital health by 5 to 10 years. Right now, there's a lot of buzz about remote process automation, RPA, data analytics, big data, the Internet of Things or the Internet of Medical Things, artificial intelligence. And when I say artificial intelligence, of course, I'm talking about machine learning and deep learning. And of course, blockchain technology. What strategic management decisions need to be made around the strategic implementation and adoption of these emerging technologies for